In this episode of View Thunder, I emerge from the cornfield and step up to the plate to review Field of Dreams from 1989.
If you build it, he will come. If you build it, he will come.
If you build what, who will come?
You didn't say.
I hate it when that happens.
Me too.
Daddy, there's a man out there on your lawn. Are you a ghost?
What do you think?
You look real to me.
Then the magic, it happened. Isn't that enough?
Annie, it's more than that. I feel it as strongly as I've ever felt anything in my life. There's a reason.
Go the distance.
Did you hear the voice too? Did you hear it?
Go the distance.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
It's more than that. It's perfect.
You build a baseball field in the middle of nowhere, and you sit here and you stare at nothing.
This field, this game, it's a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good.
Hey, is this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
Welcome to View Thunder, curated movie reviews that celebrate art, design, and cinematic storytelling. My name is Kyle, and I thank you for watching. Is there any more contentious relationship than between a father and son? It seems that there is almost a predetermined conflict brewing from the very outset. The specifics of which, and there are many, almost don't matter, because when the fracture becomes a full break, it's difficult to mend when feuding male egos are at stake. In some cases, the relationship is so far gone that it may feel like it was never there to begin with, and it would take nothing short of magic to make it right. Magic and healing is at the very heart of writer-director Phil Alden Robinson's Field of Dreams. As simple and elegant white text on black opens the film, the titles are accompanied by the equally ethereal and understated score composed by James Horner. It sparkles and hints at the magic we're about to experience. Now, I love it when a storyteller knows exactly where their story is going and how it will end right from the start. And fortunately, director Robinson builds the foundation of this film with precision. It's done so well that you'd be forgiven for having missed it the first time through. Immediately following the titles, we're given a brief backstory narrated by our main character, Ray Kinsella. He came from, how he met his wife, how a college hippie ended up a farmer in Iowa. But more importantly, it sets up Ray's father, John Kinsella. By the end of this opening montage, John is a fully fleshed out character with a life lived long before the start of this particular chapter of the story. And then, as absolutely gorgeous vistas of an Iowa cornfield grace the screen and stretch out under a never-ending sky, we promptly forget about all of that. It's a gorgeous, sweeping camera move that floats above the stalks of corn, and we're introduced to Ray in person, an understated performance by Kevin Costner exhibiting a childlike sense of awe throughout. As he walks through his field, the film wastes no time before introducing the supernatural in the form of a soft voice, as if it is being carried on the wind. It speaks to him.
If you build it, he will come.
This is a story powered by magic, and Ray, along with his wife Annie and daughter Karen, are people who seem predisposed to believing in such magic. Before we know it, Ray is plowing up a portion of his corn and spending all their savings to build the most gorgeous baseball diamond around for disgraced, long-dead baseball player, Shoeless Joe Jackson. And Joe is brilliantly portrayed by Ray Liotta, who imbues him with the solemnity and sly wisdom of a Jedi Master. Ray Kinsella's whimsical journey causes him to cross paths with beleaguered author Terrence Mann, strikingly portrayed by the great James Earl Jones, and small-town doctor Moonlight Graham, the final film role of cinema legend Burt Lancaster. All while his fanciful disregard for rationality brings him and his family face to face with bankruptcy and the loss of his farm and home. Field of Dreams is a beautifully told and expertly paced film that deals in faith, trust, regret, and ultimately peace. While some may be tempted to scoff at Ray's fanciful quest, writer-director Robinson knows exactly what kind of magical story he's telling and chooses to follow the whimsy of it rather than focus too heavily on the mundanity of real-life consequences. First and foremost, this is a fantasy film, filled with all the allegory inherent within the genre. This fairy tale just happens to take place in a far-off land called Iowa. I screened Field of Dreams on the 30th anniversary 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray released by Universal Pictures. It comes in a standard black 4K UHD case featuring the original poster art and a very standard uninspired back cover. The disc itself has some very nice disc artwork, while the bundled Blu-ray is fairly generic in appearance. However, the Blu-ray does house all the bonus content, which includes deleted scenes, interviews, behind-the-scenes featurettes, and director commentary. The 4K transfer with HDR is beautiful, with rich film grain, bright colors, deep shadows, and incredible detail captured by cinematographer John Lindley, who brings to life the splendor of Iowa at magic hour, making me also wonder if what I'm seeing is actually heaven. Audio is clean and clear, dialogue is never lost, and James Horner's film score flourishes throughout. I don't need it to be more than this, so for me, this is a definitive release. Okay, now here are my favorite parts of Field of Dreams, and this is where I get into some spoilers. So here we go. I'm a huge fan of strong couples, especially marriages, and the relationship between Ray and his wife Annie is a beautiful one. Annie is played by the wonderful Amy Madigan, who perfectly balances a fine line of enthusiasm and stoicism. The movie puts these two characters into a very difficult financial situation, but the relationship never devolves into resentment and anger. Despite Ray's highly irrational motivations, Annie never once becomes his enemy. It was an incredibly smart move to allow Annie to see the magic of the baseball field just as Ray does. It's an important story choice because while she may be on the home front dealing with an impending foreclosure, she, like the audience, knows Ray isn't completely crazy, that the addition of the baseball field has some sort of purpose for being, and that no matter what happens, they are a couple that love and trust each other. I'm a sucker for this stuff.
I have just created something totally illogical.
That's what I like about it.
Now bear with me as I dive into James Earl Jones's character, Terrence Mann. This is the character that I think has the strongest, most defined arc of the entire film. Well, Ray is our main character, and one could argue he goes on a version of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, spirit guides and all. His growth from start to finish is a fairly subtle one, whereas with 1960s activist author Terrence Mann, he enters the story like an explosion, as an angry, unhappy recluse who has given up on his writing and closed himself off from a world that bestowed, in his view, an undeserving fame upon him. But like Ray, he has a childlike curiosity that pulls him forward, and it really doesn't take much convincing for him to follow Ray. In doing so, he transforms from Ray's obstacle into guide, while also beginning his own hero's journey. Mann even finds his own mentor in the form of a small-town newspaper publisher. And when he interviews local residents about Doc Graham, it is much about his own self-discovery as it is about the late doctor. By the time Mann delivers his exquisite speech about the power of baseball at the climax of the film, he is fully transformed from cynic to romantic, and is almost ready for the next part of his journey, where he crosses from the real world to the supernatural world. But in order to do so, he must fully commit himself spiritually by confessing his lie to Ray about an interview from years earlier, one in which he had spoken of his dream of playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Once he crosses into the cornfield, the rest of his journey continues off-screen long past the closing credits. Why was he invited? If he returns, will he be a young ball player able to live out his dream? Is this his death? None of this is answered, but it begs the question in my mind, is Terrence Mann the true main character of Field of Dreams? I'm not saying he is, but I find it an interesting notion. I'd love to hear what you think about this idea in the comments below. One of the storytelling decisions I really like in Field of Dreams is how director Robinson chose very subtle and simple ways of having magical moments happen without fanfare or flourish. It just is. A good example of this is when Ray suddenly finds himself transported back to 1972. There's no time portal or flashing lights or warping of the image. He's just there. And the effect, if you can call it that, is communicated using minimal but key visual cues such as a theater marquee and vehicle tag. With nothing more, not even a song on the radio, the effect is sold. Whether this was due to budget constraints or a stylistic choice from the start doesn't matter. Just like the voice in the cornfield, there's no explanation given for how. And I don't need one. Wonderful. Now quickly, I'd like to point out how great Burt Lancaster is in the role of Doc Moonlight Graham. He only has a couple scenes amounting to only a few minutes of screen time, but his performance is filled with such pathos and quiet wisdom that his presence resonates throughout the film. He's yet another character that seems to have a childlike enthusiasm for life, which is beautifully carried over to the younger, spunkier version of himself, perfectly captured by Frank Whaley. While magic permeates every moment of the story, at its heart is the pain of unrequited love and understanding between a father and son. Transgressions, real or imagined, unresolved. So as Shoeless Joe stares at Ray before taking his leave with a coy, knowing grin, he wryly turns our attention towards home plate, where the narrated sequence that opened the film, the one we promptly set aside, comes full circle. The man removing his catcher's gear is revealed to be Ray's late father, John Kinsella. Every moment, every choice made, every emotional beat has led to this moment from the very outset. Now, I don't know about you, but as James Horner's wondrous score swells, the overwhelming weight of this second chance hits me hard. The sheer simplicity of Ray having a catch with his old man does away with the past inconsequential transgressions without further wordplay. And Phil Alden Robinson expertly chooses to close his film on this quiet note of reconciliation. Like the rest of the film, it's a moment of pure magic. If only real life were as simple. I didn't see Field of Dreams theatrically. I first saw it on cable not long after it arrived there, and I instantly fell in love with it. It's a film that only gets better as I get older. I highly recommend it, and if you have 4K capabilities, the UHD from Universal is first rate. And that's it for this episode of View Thunder. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed my review, I'd appreciate you hitting those like and subscribe buttons. And until next time, remember, always stay for the end credits.